Imagine you walk into a store and see two bottles of vodka. One is a regular boring bottle and it costs $20. The other is a spectacular crystal skull, almost like an artifact from an Indiana Jones movie, and it costs $50. Obviously, you choose the skull because your brain tells you that something so incredible on the outside must contain a nectar of the gods on the inside, right? Well, get ready, because you just paid $50 for $3 worth of vodka and a very expensive bottle. The most incredible thing is that the genius behind this illusion wasn't a Russian master distiller, but a ghostbuster. Yes, for more than a decade, Dan Aykroyd sold us spirits in a way that even Slimer couldn't have imagined, building a $100 million empire based on one of the most brilliant marketing lies in history. To understand how a glass skull managed to conquer the world, we have to travel back to 2008. At that time, the vodka market was the equivalent of an accountant's meeting, a sea of clear bottles, all promising exactly the same thing. Purity, smoothness, premium filtration. It was so boring that people chose their vodka based on which one had the hardest name to pronounce. Grey Goose, Belvedere, Ketel One. They were all fighting on the same battlefield of perceived quality. Dan Aykroyd, who by then was not just a movie star, but also a successful entrepreneur with the House of Blues chain. He realized he couldn't win that war. Trying to compete on smoothness would be like trying to beat Usain Bolt in a race while wearing ski boots. He needed to change the game entirely. And his personal obsession with the paranormal gave him the perfect idea. And what if vodka wasn't just a drink but a mystical experience? The inspiration came from the legend of the 13 crystal skulls, artifacts that supposedly possessed supernatural powers. Aykroyd, together with his partner, the artist John Alexander, decided that their product wouldn't just be vodka, it would be a vessel for that mystique. They spent 2 years and hundreds of thousands of dollars perfecting a bottle shaped like a human skull, manufactured by the prestigious Milanese company Bruni Glass. Most vodka bottles cost less than $1 to produce. The crystal head bottle, at first, cost between $10 and $14. The liquid inside, as we already mentioned, was barely $3. The bottle wasn't just the packaging. It was the real product. It was a collector's item, a piece of art that screamed, "Look at me," from the shelf. But how do you justify such a high price for such a common liquid? This is where the master trick comes into play. A business model I call luxury placebo marketing. It's not about selling a product, but about selling a perception so strong that it alters the consumer's experience. Crystal Head couldn't compete in actual quality, so it created a narrative of mystical quality. The first pillar of this strategy was their claim of being filtered 7 times, 3 of which through Herkimer diamonds. Sounds incredibly luxurious, doesn't it? The problem is that Herkimer diamonds aren't actually diamonds. They are double-terminated quartz crystals found in Herkimer County, New York. They're pretty, yes, but they're worth only pennies. Legally, they could say it was filtered with diamonds, exploiting a semantic technicality. It was like if I sold lemonade sweetened with gold, just because sugar is golden colored. It's a brilliant lie because it sounds expensive, but it's incredibly cheap to pull off. This strategy of selling the packaging and not the candy isn't exclusive to vodka, not by a long shot. The beauty industry is the world champion at this. Brands like La Mer sell a moisturizer for over $300 for a small jar, claiming it contains a miracle broth fermented with a secret formula. Dermatologists and cosmetic chemists will tell you that its main ingredients, like seaweed extract and petrolatum, are found in products that cost a fraction of that price. What you're paying for isn't revolutionary science, but a heavy, elegant jar. A story about an aerospace scientist who burned his face, and the feeling of exclusivity. It's the same trick as Crystal Head. The story and the packaging create a placebo that makes you believe the product is superior. Could it be that the secret to eternal beauty is just a good narrative? Of course, it wasn't all smooth sailing. Shortly after the launch, the Liquor Control Board of Ontario in Canada banned the bottle, arguing that the skull imagery could be associated with death or even encourage irresponsible alcohol consumption. For a normal brand, being banned in your own country would be a disaster. For Crystal Head, it was the best publicity gift they could have received. The news spread like wildfire. The vodka so intense it was banned. Suddenly, it wasn't just a pretty bottle. It was an object of desire, a symbol of rebellion. The ban created an artificial shortage and a narrative of a dangerous product, which made it irresistible to consumers. The ban didn't last long, but the damage, or rather, the benefit, was already done. The economic impact of this strategy was, quite simply, monumental. With an initial investment of just $600,000, the brand sold more than 3 million bottles in its first 5 years. By 2018, its annual revenue exceeded $100 million. All of this was achieved by selling a standard corn-based vodka produced by a government-owned distillery in Canada called Rock Spirits, which made the same type of liquor for another 150 brands. The retail price, around $50, represented an increase of nearly 250% compared to vodkas of similar quality. Socially, it normalized the idea that the value of an alcoholic beverage could lie almost entirely in its packaging, opening the door to the avalanche of celebrity liquors we see today. Were we buying vodka or just paying for a very elaborate shelf ornament? Now, if you're like me and you love the spectacle but hate overpaying, there's a trick to beat the system. It's time to execute the maneuver. Indiana Jones and the Temple of Savings. The value of Crystal Head lies in the bottle, not in the liquid. So, once you've bought your first and only bottle, enjoy it. And when it's finished, don't throw it away. Clean it thoroughly and simply refill it with a high-quality but much more affordable vodka, like Tito's or Kirkland Signature from Costco, which consistently win in blind tastings against much more expensive brands. This way, you keep the conversation piece in your bar. You impress your guests with the skull and serve a drink that, ironically, might actually be of better quality. All while saving yourself a small fortune. You get the prestige without the markup. The legal loophole that Crystal Head exploited so masterfully was that of advertising and language. By using the term Herkimer Diamonds, they operated in a gray area where they weren't technically lying, but they were emotionally deceiving the consumer. There is no regulation that says you can't use the trade name of a mineral to imply that it's a gemstone. It's a loophole based on the assumption that the average consumer isn't a geologist. This brings us to the second pillar of their deception: purity. Crystal Head launched a massive campaign around the idea that their vodka had no additives, like glycerol or sugar, which are sometimes used to smooth out the flavor. The thing is, by definition, practically no quality premium vodka uses additives. It was an industry standard. But since no one else bothered to advertise it, Crystal Head took ownership of the concept. What they were selling wasn't convenience, but status. The magic solution Crystal Head offered was a cure for boredom. In a world where everyone wants to stand out, having a crystal skull on your bar was an instant statement. It said, "I'm not like the others, I'm interesting, a bit mysterious, and I have good taste." It's the economy of showing off. People didn't buy the vodka to enjoy its subtle notes of filtered corn. They bought it for the Instagram photo, to be the center of attention at a party, to have a story to tell. The product wasn't the drink, it was the identity the bottle allowed you to project. It's a personal branding tool that just happens to contain alcohol. How much would you be willing to pay to instantly look cooler? This tactic of selling purity is a subtle form of what's known as health washing. In other words, making a product seem healthier or cleaner than it really is. By bombarding us with messages like no additives, kosher, and purely filtered, the brand creates a halo of healthiness around a product that is, at its core, diluted ethanol, a toxin for the body. It's the same psychological mechanism that makes people order a Diet Coke with a triple cheeseburger and bacon. It lets us feel a little less guilty about our vices. It's an emotional fraud, not necessarily a legal one, that convinces you you're making a cleaner choice, when in reality the only real difference is in your wallet. The design of the Crystal Head experience is a masterclass in how to dress up a product. Everything, from the weight of the glass to the way light refracts through it. It's designed to feel premium. Pouring a glass from this bottle is theatrical. It's a ritual. You're not just serving a drink. You're presenting an artifact. Aykroyd himself was a crucial part of this experience. He spent more than 90 days a year traveling across North America, signing bottles at liquor stores and appearing at conventions. His fame and his genuine passion for the paranormal created what psychologists call the halo effect. Our tendency for positive feelings about a person to transfer to their products. We weren't drinking vodka. We were drinking the story of a Ghostbuster. In blind tastings, Crystal Head never stood out against cheaper vodkas. But who cares about the truth when the legend is so good? Today, Crystal Head is sold in more than 80 countries. The trick worked so well that it created a new category. Celebrity liquors based on image. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson with his Teremana tequila. Ryan Reynolds with Aviation Gin. George Clooney with Casamigos. They all follow the same playbook that Aykroyd wrote. The future of Crystal Head depends on its ability to keep innovating in its one true strength: design. That's why they've released versions of the bottle in black, in an iridescent finish called Aurora, and even a special Pride edition. The skull is no longer enough. Now they need a whole closet full of skulls to keep the public's attention. The question is, how long can a trick last before everyone realizes that the emperor, or in this case the vodka, is naked? In the end, that $50 bottle on the shelf was never about the vodka. It was about a story, about how an iconic actor used an ancient legend and a spectacular design. He convinced us that perception is more powerful than reality. Crystal Head didn't sell a liquid. It sold a belief. The belief that what we hold in our hands defines who we are. The real spirit in that bottle wasn't the alcohol, but the genius of marketing. Now I'd love to know your opinion. Have you ever bought a product more for the packaging or the story than for the product itself? And do you think the markup is justified if the product makes you feel good? By the way, if you're fascinated by how a brand can play with your perception of value to sell you something at a crazy price, you have to watch our video on how Rolex brainwashes you into buying $80,000 watches. The strategy is surprisingly similar.